Today I woke up to find that some of Shan's vines had wrapped around me as we slept. Little tendrils wound around my index finger, thicker vines looped around my back, feathery little leaves tickled my neck. That probably sounds horrifying, but it's not. They're just other parts of Shan's body, like their eyes or hair or legs. But it did take me longer than usual to get out of bed. Although, hey, wasn't all bad. By the time I got untangled and dressed and over to where I left my phone, I had 17 missed calls and texts from Miranda. I didn't need to check any of the messages to know what that meant. They had another lead, yet another clue about yet another splinter leader. And that probably meant yet another attempted mosaic, more damaged or dead tiles. Shit. And my day started off so good. This is Spines. Winry started chattering as soon as Shan and I got down into her little computer lair. That was a lucky break, finding Dana Johansson's house, she said. It took me a minute to remember that was the name of the woman who owned the house where we'd found the ritual remains on the last mission. Winry pointed to a bunch of driver's license photos pulled up on her screens. We found calls and emails between her and all these people. All people with the resources to be the one who replaced Elliot. There were 5 faces, 3 male, 2 female, a range of ages and ethnicities. Shan folded their arms and stared at the screen. So I suppose the next move is to monitor all these people and see which one coincides with the disturbance. Already done, Winry said. She gets nervous and giggly whenever Shan is around. Granted, the same is true for most people in the borough. But Winry's especially bad at hiding it. Shan never seems to notice. Winry sat in her swivel chair and clicked on some icons. Okay, it's... I must have saved it in the wrong place. Hang on. She clicked and typed some more. Finally, she stopped and frowned at me. I don't understand. I had it, a disturbance near where one of these people lives. She pointed vaguely, first at one of the faces, then at another. It's fine, I said. It's just a file. We'll find it again. No, Winry said. She started to look panicky. No, you don't understand. I just found it, just now. And now I don't remember. I know there was something and I found it and it was near one of these people, but now I don't know. I have a photographic memory, Ren. I don't forget things. Shan took her hands in their own just as she started to get hysterical. That distracted her a little. Shan closed their eyes and lightly ran their fingertips over Winry's palm. Poor girl looked like she didn't know whether to cry or come. Finally, Shan stepped back, frowning. It's odd, they said. It's as if there are 2 layers in one memory. One's fading, but I know it involved this person. They gestured at one of the driver's license photos, a guy named Neil Duvalier. Yeah, Winry almost shouted. Him and Cincinnati, I think. But I don't know, that's all I can remember. It took us a while to get her calmed down. She's used to great recall, getting her brain to do whatever she wants it to do. She doesn't know what it feels like to have holes in your life. She wasn't the only one, though. I talked to 3 other seekers who help Winry on her projects, and all of them were certain that they'd found something, that they'd had a lead, but they didn't know what it was now. And it got worse as time went on, with even the sketchy outlines of the guy in Cincinnati fading away. Still, it gave Shan and I enough to go on, so we went looking. Things you should know about the Seekers. This is Winry's story. I don't know if this is representative of the experiences of the Seekers, since I haven't really talked to a lot of other people in the borough. I don't know anything beyond the names of most of them. Just enough to know them by sight as Zafir or Karen or Magdalena. But nothing more than that. I think that's by design. They avoid telling me personal stuff. But I managed to get Winry drunk one time, and here's what I found out. It began as a love story, like so many others. Winry and Tasha, two geek girls meeting over a Bunsen burner in advanced chemistry. They were together for nearly a year before Tasha told Winry her deepest secret. She could do things others couldn't do. Winry didn't believe her at first, especially when Tasha had a hard time explaining what it was exactly she could do. But then she showed Winry, and that changed everything. Tasha's gift was language. I don't mean she was well-spoken or she could speak 15 languages or anything like that. I mean that she could make language do things to people who heard it. Things language isn't supposed to do. She explained it to Winry as if she could unstuff words and fill them back up with whatever she wanted. It was tricky, and the effect she wanted to create had to be a good match for the word it hid within. But she mastered it, and she developed her own system over the years. Take bellicose. That's an obscure word, one you don't see very much, and hear even less. But once Tasha was done with it, bellicose wasn't just a fancier way of saying aggressive or hostile. No, now bellicose carried a secret weapon, an inner ear disturbance so severe that anyone who heard it would get knocked right on their ass. There were others like that. Vermilion could repair astigmatism. Conclave reduced body temperature. Frivolity produced instantaneous orgasm. Winry blushed when she told me this. I didn't ask which words Tasha had used to convince her, but I could guess. Tasha swore Winry to secrecy, of course, and Winry promised and kissed her and said she'd never, ever betray her. And at the time, I think she probably meant it. But that scientist mind of hers couldn't let it go. It started small and simple. Google searches and browsing medical journals. Reading up on neurolinguistics. She got Tasha to provide some demonstrations. And of course, she made it seem like she was just interested. She wanted Tasha to turn her on with recondite, get her high with pangolin, fix her headaches with detritus. And that was part of it, sure. But there was another part. The notes she kept in a hidden folder, the ones she took when Tasha wasn't looking. The little tests she started threading into conversations, hoping to make Tasha utter specific word combinations. The ideas started making their way into Winry's research. Just little footnotes at first. Then bigger ideas. Things she started saying out loud at conferences. Although, of course, she made sure to avoid those parts when she talked to Tasha about her work. It all came to an end a year after Tasha told her the secret. They were living together. They'd started talking shyly about getting married. And Winry's lies had gotten so deep and gone on for so long that she knew she could never even begin to undo them. She thought she could keep it going, and she might have been able to if she hadn't been approached by the Seekers. They keep an eye out for work like Winry's, research that has obviously been influenced by contact with a gifted person. They figured out her and Tasha after just a few short weeks of observation. But they missed one important detail. They missed the fact that Tasha didn't know she was a lab rat. They assumed Winry couldn't or wouldn't have kept that from her. And that's why, when a mid-level seeker showed up at their home and tried to recruit them both, Tasha just got quieter and quieter as the man talked. Winry tried to reach out to her, to give her a hug, to do something. But Tasha just looked at her and said one word. Winry wouldn't tell me what that word was, but it made her black out. When she woke up, Tasha's things were gone, and Winry couldn't see her. She couldn't see Tasha's name printed on paper. She couldn't focus on pictures of her face. She couldn't even look directly at things Tasha had left behind. There were just blank spots where those things should have been. So Winry went to the Seekers because she had nothing left. And because she thought maybe, just maybe, it would be a way to find Tasha again. She wondered aloud as she told me this if she had been in Tasha's presence since it happened, if she had stood right in front of her old beloved and had just been unable to see her. It's easy to find a place where someone tried to make a mosaic, once you know what it feels like. It's unmistakable, like a scent. This time it was in an abandoned hospital, the kind of place teenagers dare each other to explore. We found the remnants of the ritual, the pool of blood and the symbols drawn on the walls. And we found something else, too. We found sets of footprints, bare, bloody feet limping away from the scene. My heart started pounding. The tiles don't usually survive, whether or not the mosaic does. The only other time I knew about was when Zachary and I were made, and those tiles were so damaged they destroyed a city. But that's not what it felt like here. I should have been able to feel it. Gifted people spinning out of control around me. I didn't, though. It just felt normal, like any city. There were other things that didn't make sense. Shan tried reading the history of the room from the walls and the objects left behind, but they couldn't see anything clearly. It's like trying to see two completely distinct things happening at the same time, they said, frustrated. I see a middle-aged woman with tangled red hair, struggling naked from this room. But I also see a past in which that never happened and she was never here. And 7 others like that. Here, but not. Finally, Shan managed to get enough of a fix to follow the path of just one of them. Just the path of the woman with the red hair. We traced her route down alleys, into an apartment laundry room where she must have gotten clothes, across backyards, winding from one side of the street to the other. We mainly followed Shan's glimpses, the history embedded in walls and trees and telephone poles. But I felt it too. Little flashes of knowledge that a tile was there, that someone had tried and failed to make a mosaic nearby. But it was like it was something in the corner of my eye, something I couldn't quite see. We ended up at a nice little house with a cute yard and potted flowers on the front porch. She lived here, Shan said. She limped inside, and she tripped on the front step. She'd stopped crying by then. She looks as though she was just numb by that point. Well, I said, let's hope she's still numb, not pissed off. And I rang the bell. A guy in his 30s answered. He had olive skin, glasses, a nice haircut. He smiled at me. Yes? I told him we were looking for a middle-aged woman with red hair, someone who might have been involved in an accident several weeks ago. The man frowned. Oh, I'm sorry, but there's nobody like that who lives here. It's just me and my husband. He held out his hand. I'm Tariq. Shan and I both shook the guy's hand. I searched for some sign that the guy was lying, but he seemed genuinely concerned about this mystery woman who had been in an accident. I tried compelling him, forcing him to tell us the truth about the woman. But Tariq just smiled and repeated what he'd already said. No woman like that lived here. No one like that had lived here recently. Tariq and his husband Andrew had been here for nearly 4 years and didn't share the house with anyone. I glanced at Shan out of the corner of my eye. They stared at Tariq, frowning, head tilted to one side as though trying to figure something out. They didn't say anything, didn't ask any questions the entire time. Finally, I gave up and we left Tariq alone in this place where our missing tile's trail had gone cold. There are two incompatible histories, Shan said once we were away from the house. I can see them both at the same time. In one, there's the woman who walked away from the site. In the other, there's this man Tariq and his husband, and they're the only ones who have ever been there. They rub their forehead as though trying to get rid of a headache. Let's try something else, I said. I held out my hands. You can peek into the future, right? So take a look at mine and see what we decide to do next. Shan smiled a little. You realize that makes absolutely no sense, they said. I shrugged. What part of our lives does make sense? But Shan humored me. They took my hands in their own. I still shiver when they do that, even though we've done so much more. Shan was quiet for a minute before opening their eyes. You're searching, a little while from now. And you're holding Akira. Akira's helping you somehow. Of course, I understood it right away. Akira is the creation of, or is I guess part of, one of my tiles, Bilal. Someone who turned themselves into a place, someone who left this world. If anybody or anything would have a way of making sense of things that both exist and don't exist, it would be him. Half an hour later, we stood close to Tariq and Andrew's house again. We'd gone back to the place we were staying to pick up Akira. Akira always travels when I do. I don't trust anyone else to take care of him. I held Akira in my hands, bundled in a little towel against the cold. He didn't seem to mind. Okay, Akira, I said, show us what happened to those tiles. Go on, boy. He didn't do anything at first, which was to be expected because he's a freaking frog. But I waited and then turned in a circle, and at some point, Akira's tongue flicked out at the air. I swung back around, and his tongue again shot out in the exact same direction. I walked in the direction he indicated. At every street corner, I stopped and turned in all directions. Sometimes he'd have us continue going straight. Sometimes he'd indicate a turn to the right or the left. And that's how we made our way through the neighborhoods of Cincinnati, walking for hours. Shan never questioned what we were doing. They might not have understood exactly what was happening, but they trusted me and I trusted Akira, so on we went. Finally, we hit a spot where Akira pointed directly at a house. We tried going around the block, thinking he was indicating something beyond it. But no, it was definitely a particular house he'd led us to. I handed Akira over to Shan. Hang on to him, I said. I'll be back in a few. You're not going in there by yourself, Shan said. Oh, yes, I am, young protege, I replied. Remember? Officially, I'm training you. Even though that wasn't really fair, because Shan was really as good at this stuff as I was by this point. Look, I don't want Akira to get hurt, okay? I don't want him in the line of fire if something happens. Keep an eye on him, will you? Shan looked like they wanted to argue with me, but finally they just nodded and leaned down to give me a kiss. Be careful, okay? Then they settled on some steps with Akira. I headed over to the house. It was a squat, and we were in a bad part of town. Most of the houses on the block looked abandoned, empty, coated with age and graffiti. Trash lay clumped on the sidewalk. This house was different, though. It was clean, even though it hadn't been painted in a while. The sidewalk out front had been swept. When I knocked on the front door, someone called for me to come inside. The inside was as clean and tidy as the outside, although I could tell all the furniture was mismatched and secondhand. A portable massage table sat in the middle of the room. A tall, curvy woman sat on the couch. She held out her hand as I approached, like I was supposed to kiss it or something. Welcome, dear, she said. My name is Thorn. Right away, I noticed her fingernails. They were thick and long and white, but I don't think they were painted that way. They were more like sheets of bone grown out through her fingertips. As soon as our hands touched, she let out a little gasp. "Oh, my dear, I see why you came to me." I wasn't sure what she meant. I stepped back. "I came because I've been looking for people. I think you have something to do with the trouble I'm having." She said nothing for a long moment. Then, "If they've come to me for help, you should just give up looking now. The people you're looking for can't be found." I told her I didn't want to hurt them. I told her she could trust me, that I was looking because I wanted to help them, to protect them. She shook her head. "You misunderstand me, dear. This doesn't have anything to do with me trusting or not trusting you. I didn't say I wouldn't tell you. I said I can't." Someone knocked on the front door and she gestured to the couch. "Sit down and watch, and you'll see why there's no sense in looking for these people." Someone came in. I don't know who they were or what they looked like, whether they were a man or a woman, even though I spoke to them and watched Thorn work on them for nearly an hour. You'll understand why in a second. From what I gather about Thorn and the work she does, this person would have been desperate, maybe dying, certainly ready to die. They'd have to be. Thorn asked this person, whoever they were, to take off their shirt and lie face down on the massage table. She tied their wrists and legs. "For your own protection, honey," she said. Then she held out her hands, and a tiny corona of blue flame flared out around the tip of each of her fingernails. And then she started burning designs into this person's back. They screamed and cried in agony, I know that, although I can't recall what those cries sounded like. Thorn murmured to herself as she carved the careful designs. Born in Chicago, November 4th, 1980. You saw a meteor shower on Independence Day in 1986. Playing in your backyard, you caught dragonflies during the day and fireflies at night. It went on and on like that, pivotal events and mundane details. And as Thorn worked, the person beneath her hands began to change. At the end, when Thorn stepped back to survey her handiwork, the person lying on the table was a slim, red-headed woman in her 30s. She wore an expensive-looking diamond bracelet. I don't know what kind of shirt she'd taken off before Thorn started working, but I know it wasn't the cream silk blouse that now hung from a hook on the wall. The burned lines on the woman's back remained, but they were faded, old scars. She sat up. "Oh, I must have fallen asleep. She frowned and looked around. "Wait, this isn't where I usually go for my massage." Thorn handed over the blouse. "No, dear, remember? The spa's closed today, so we arranged to meet here." The woman nodded. "Oh, right, of course, I forgot." She laughed. "It must be this new case, I'm so busy with it." Thorn smiled. "Of course. You just go home and get some rest now." And she showed the woman to the door. A silver BMW was now parked on that blighted street. Thorn waited until the woman drove away before she closed the door and looked back at me. "So you see," she said, "that's why I can't help you. The person who came to me doesn't exist anymore. I don't remember them any better than you do. Their place in the world has been rewritten, and that can't be undone. That person who was just here? Well now, whoever she was when she arrived, now she has always been Audrey Collins, a lawyer who has lunch with her sister every Saturday She's never not been that now. I stood. Well, if that's true, the ones I've been looking for should be safe. I'm guessing they came to you because they were damaged. If they were like the other ones I met, they were ruined when somebody tried to make them into something else. I'm glad they found a way to be fixed. It's a high price, Thorne said. It's only for people whose existing life isn't worth living. They have to die, you see, to become someone new. She stepped forward and took my hands in her own. It's something I can do for you. You have so much pain. I can make you something else. I thought about it. I really did for just a second. But then I thought about Shan sitting outside holding Akira. And I thought about the splinter and all the lives I hadn't managed to save so far and all the ones they might ruin in the future. I even thought about you, Zachary. God help me. I shook my head. No, not for me. At least, not yet. Thorne nodded. I don't think she was surprised. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a card. If it ever gets to be too much. It had a phone number, nothing else. I nodded and put the card in my pocket. I didn't think I'd ever use it. I still don't. But I also don't think I'll ever throw it away. I left that house and got Shan and Akira, and we drove away. Whatever happened in Cincinnati, there's no one left to save. We were too late for that. Spines is a production of Zoom Doom Stories. It's narrated by Ren Jones, written by Jamie Killen, website and logos by Benjamin Pond, produced by Jamie Killen and Benjamin Pond. You can support Spines by visiting patreon.com/Spines Podcast and by subscribing and leaving a review on iTunes. Spines is a member of Fate Crafters Studios. Find more great shows at fatecrafters.net. This week we recommend The Tunnels. The Tunnels is a serialized audio drama about the mysterious tunnels found beneath a small town in Georgia. What are they? What is their history? And what are those mysterious sounds heard within them? Visit tunnelspodcast.com today to find out more.